Hello and welcome to In the Court of the Wenton King. I think this is an interesting one. On the one hand, I don't think anyone would have predicted this particular week, but it's one we should have done. And also it fits. If you're wondering why there wasn't a King Crimson on Wednesday, that's the reason. This fits next. Yeah, well, actually no, it goes before Exposure actually. So to really review this album though, we've got to tell the story of the album really. So we kind of started in '76, so which is just after USA kind of time I think. Bruford and Wenton made an attempt to form a band with Rick Wakeman, or at least Bill Bruford says Rick Wakeman invited him round his house and they had a jam, and then they were a band, and Bill Bruford was like, oh god. But it's interesting. Bill Bruford, what he says about Rick Wakeman, that he says he was kind of a bit of a big kid. In the end, his management decided that they weren't cool enough for him, which in retrospect was probably an error, really, because he's not that famous. He was then. So once that had dissipated, I think that there was an attempt to reform King Crimson. Fripp had finished his whatever he was doing, and I think it was easy management doing this. Although there's a suggestion it was actually Bruford and Wenton doing it, and Fripp said, "No, not doing that." So Bruford and Wenton continued and said, "Right, okay, well each person chooses a band member from somewhere. What could go wrong?" But the thing is, if King Crimson had actually continued, if Fripp hadn't withheld the passage of his opinion, surely his response to bringing back Ian McDonald would have been, this is the guy that he said he was leaving the band in 1969 with Michael Giles in the back of the car with Fripp in the front, announced, "Oh, I'm leaving, I don't like the way you play my songs." Surely Fripp's response would actually, if they were going to carry on, his response would have been get lost, I would imagine. In which case, Eddie Jobson, who's on USA as either repairing or replacing David Cross's parts, may have been brought in as the next thing. In which case, that really lends weight to this idea that if this is King Crimson without Fripp, which is what Fripp says. He says this is King Crimson without Robert Fripp, but therefore it is not King Crimson, and it doesn't sound anything like King Crimson at all. So what does it sound like? It is a jazz rock hybrid, but it's not fusion. Not really. It doesn't. I don't think it sounds anything like fusion, which is really interesting, because fusion's very much an American thing. It's kind of it's sickly and a certain type of organ keyboardiness, particular type of sound, very much influenced by Bish's Brew, and I love all that stuff, Mavishnu Orchestra and all that. And maybe this is more Euro, and you've got, we'll talk about how much keyboards there are. There's lots of keyboards, but maybe it's kind of like the cover is kind of icy and look, it's the Earth, it's the UK. Big chords and not really spaces, less of a jam element, and yet that thing made into rock songs. But they are songs as well. And the vocal melodies are jazzy. They're jazzy vocal melodies, which is unique. I don't think there's anything like that, which is a shame because it's great. A long way from Easy Money though. Nothing like Easy Money at all. But it does feature my favourite guitar solo ever. The thing is, I think the reason we've not done it yet is because I think the production is kind of wimpy. I kept changing my mind about this, putting it on the thing. Actually, it sounds alright, it's just the sound of it. But my impression is that Eddie Jobson is very controlling. And I think maybe he had a hand in the faders in the mix and things like that, which means that it's full of keyboards, and in the background you've got Alan Holdsworth going, But maybe it's part of the way it's played as well, and it does bring out the Bruford's drumming fantastically. It's a great example of his drumming at that time. It's the sound of it brings it out, at least the top half of his drumming. Trebly, but yeah, a really interesting one. And really good.
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult to get hold of, isn't it, Kev?
Yeah, it's very strange.
We had a look and there's no £10 version, put it that way.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting though, wasn't it? It looks like there's a big box set coming out, 130 box set. Not very good value though, it looks like something like 8 discs. Whereas, Starless is 27 discs, and Lark Stones in Aspic is 10 discs, but that's only 100. And that's lots of Lark Stones in Aspic.
So it's a bit of an oddity, isn't it, in that sense? That
yeah, and they were big. They were very successful, briefly, playing big places. That was really interesting.
I mean, when you look at it, it looks a bit like a sort of almost like a prog supergroup.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Which supergroups, they don't tend to have a very good reputation, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be.
It doesn't have to be terrible.
No, it doesn't have to be terrible. Whatchamacallit did a few good ones. The LP. They're a super group.
Yeah, they are, aren't they? Yeah.
I mean, you say it doesn't sound like King Crimson. What I heard immediately made me think of King Crimson. Now, I don't know if that's because of the personnel involved, and I was sort of pre-expecting a sort of King Crimson type thing. But there was something about it that felt a little bit King Crimson-y.
Okay.
But not... King Crimson's got something else. It's obviously the frit factor, that elusive thing that's very difficult to define, that makes King Crimson stand above everything else. So when it starts, you get these sort of synthy sounds, and you think, oh God. Now, at the time, that may have been really, really progressive and that, but because we've had the 80s and everything like that, you think, but actually, when you get into it, it's pretty good. Yeah, good album.
What's really interesting is how One of a Kind, which we've already reviewed, fits in with this. We'll talk about that kind of at the end, really. But One of a Kind sounds like fusion. This doesn't sound like fusion. This sounds like prog, I suppose. I prefer the start, the first 3 tracks, which is a suite, In the Dead of Night suite, and the last 2 tracks, which might be kind of controversial because I think it's the middle 3 tracks are the ones they played live, the ones that John Wenton still plays, etc., etc., compared to the last 2. But the reason is the last 2 are written by Alan Holdsworth and Bill Bruford, because there was a separation there between the 2 halves of the band. You know, there's good stuff in those middle 3 songs though. I mean, Alaska, some really cool synth stuff, which you can put your head in the time and everything. It's actually really cool. But there's a bit of that in Mental Medication as well. Bill Bruford actually wrote the lyrics to Mental Medication. But yeah, so those last 2 tracks are lovely. There's some really great acoustic guitar at the start of Nevermore as well, which is a rare thing. But they didn't play them live. Apparently, Alan Holdsworth kept changing the arrangement of his song, so in the end, John Wenton and Eddie Jobson were quite annoyed and quite impatient. That's the impression we get anyway, and there was a bit of a personality clash. Echoes of David Cross, really, in that Bill Bruford's thicker skin, he's got very thick skin, he'll take anything, but Holdsworth isn't, and was very sensitive, and it wasn't good, you know. And even the thing with the bass volume, where he'd turn his bass down during the sound check, because he doesn't trust the sound mixer, and then in the show he'll turn it back up again, you know. You can understand that, it because a lot of mixers will turn the bass down and not think it's important, so, you know, but still that meant that he's going, you know, and Alan Holdsworth, there's no power chords on this album. There's some really cool riffs, but they're single note riffs, and there's some jazz chords on the guitar. There's no power chords on the guitar. The other thing is the falsetto singing is a bit strange. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Wenton's not technically up to the task quite. I mean, I really like it, but it's not his kind of thing really, is it? It's all that falsetto. But maybe that was a commercial decision. In many ways, it's John Wenton and Eddie Jobson's band. It's their band. In that they've done the market research, really. This is a supergroup, and they're looking for a gap in the market, and really they saw there was a gap in the market for ELP, really. That's what they saw. You know, like Foreigner, bands like this, is looking at, you know, your target audience and things like that. It's a long way from where Alan Holdsworth and Bill Bruford are. You can see how that's a problem. But it doesn't mean it's bad music, and obviously now we talk about these prog supergroups who made pop music in the 80s, and we talk about Asia, which is where it went. That's a whole different thing. This is great proggy, commercial end of proggy, but still very much proggy music. And it's such a shame there isn't very much of it.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely get the sense, because you mentioned Bruford wrote some lyrics on this. It's sort of, there's a lot of little things like that on the album that sort of push it to the periphery of sort of, stops it becoming like that super successful thing that's unstoppable. And it becomes interesting rather than engaging at times. So when you try, you know, you want to engage with the music, but actually, because there's so many interesting things going on and personality is so interesting, you can sort of get a little bit lost in that. Yeah. Rather than just sit back and enjoy it.
Yeah, but maybe that's a production issue as well, because the production isn't very good. It doesn't invite you into the sound of it. It's got to be said, you know, John Wenton is a different character now. The John Wenton on Lock Songs in Aspic, singing Easy Money, he's almost a different character. He's a star now, and this is what he wants. He wants massive stadiums and all that success. You know, and it's so easy to judge that and say, well, it's not about money, man. But most bands, touring bands, who are in the second division, if you like King Crimson, they're not that massive successful. It's on the tour bus. It's eating beans and chips at the roadside cafe and sleeping in the van sometimes, or maybe, you know, at the time. It wasn't that comfortable. This idea that they're all millionaires and then they choose to sell out to make billions isn't true. You know, if they really wanted money, they had to sell out. But also that means Fripp was vindicated. Fripp's thing of saying, well, that's the way John Wenton is going. That's not the way King Crimson is going to go. You know, he was right. And obviously with Asia. I mean, Eddie Jobson asked Alan Holdsworth to play the guitar solo from In the Dead of Night, note for note, and then I think that kind of says it all in that Alan Holdsworth isn't going to play a guitar solo note for note. He wouldn't even understand why. Why would you do that? But Eddie Jobson is thinking, that's the hook. And it is. And, you know, Alan Holdsworth's most famous thing is that guitar solo, still now, is that guitar solo. Your introduction to Alan Holdsworth is that guitar solo. So, and Eddie Jobson recognised that as a marketing thing and wanted to push it more. And they'd done their homework, the two of them had done their homework about the target audience. The US needed this ELP band because ELP had sort of given up or whatever they'd done. But maybe it wasn't clear at the time. I mean, jazz on that scale, playing stadiums we're talking about, was dead. You were never going to see jazz in a stadium again. Maybe until Jamie Cullum or something. But so maybe that was a mistake in what they did. And John Wenton realised going onward was that really you've got to go much more commercial than that. The way things were going, getting to the 80s.
Jazz, in a sense, is about indiscipline, isn't it? It's about going with what you want to do at the moment and just sort of playing around with it. Whereas being commercially successful, there is a discipline in that. Yeah. In a sense, you've got to churn out crap. Yeah. Well, okay. Well, you've got to churn out the right sort of stuff time after time. And if you're a jazzo, that's just completely against your musical principles. Yeah. Yeah. You're more interested in what's musically pleasing rather than what's commercially pleasing. If Wenton's looking at going down, being more commercially successful, then obviously the writing's on the wall, isn't it? Yeah. And in this band, you've got the two people who have become, or maybe they always were, craftsmen. That's what Bill Bruford calls them. They're craftsmen. It's a craft, making the perfect song. Video Killed the Radio Star took however many months and cost however much to make one song because it was all about crafting it perfect. There it is. You know, and those are the people who can do sessions. They're really good at sessions because they can do impressions of people. But the other two guys are the artist side and the jazzy side. They can't really think like that. They're always looking for something new. They hope it's a product, but they've got to do it regardless. They have to do it. They're not really in control of it in a way. It just happens. And obviously, I mean, the thing with Holdsworth is the nonsense criticism that gets levelled at him. Really, they're saying he's a craftsman, which he obviously isn't. And there's the example of him not really being really uncomfortable in that situation, not being happy at all. So they're talking bollocks when they say, oh, well, he's just a technician. He's practiced and plays all the notes, but it's not expressive, you know. He knows all the notes.
He plays them all. Artists, in the end, make the most fulfilling music. And the craftsmen make good music, you know. Asia isn't good.
Well, artists tend to find new music, which is satisfying, and tradesmen turn that into a bit of an industry. Yeah. That's essentially what happens. Yeah, or I mean, you know, Foreigner, I mentioned Foreigner. Foreigner are really good, I like Foreigner. That's craftsman music, so you can put that on and it's good music, there it is, da-da-da. It's not going to change your life, you're not going to keep putting it on every day because it's so good. That's the artists that do that, isn't it? So yeah, they did a massive tour, lots of promotion, played on the radio, this jazzy stuff played on the radio and all this. End of the tour, it might be in the car on the way to the last gig. In my mind, it's in the car on the way to Madison Square Gardens, but it's always in the car on the way to Madison Square Gardens, so I don't know if that's true. In the car on the way to New York, John Wenton gave Bruford an ultimatum: do you want to work with me or do you want to work with Alan Holdsworth? Because he's going in a commercial direction, he can't do this, he can't deal with this guy, he's got to go. And Bruford took the high ground and said, this is where my future is, this is me. You know, the financially insecure route, which is really interesting given that he by trade, he was trained as a accountant. It's strange how it turns out these two people who were in King Crimson, the rhythm section, they don't naturally work together. They were in King Crimson and that was it. And it turned out, really, they weren't a natural pairing. So yeah, Bill Bruford took some material he was making for the second UK album, put it on One of a Kind, and was replaced by Terry Bozzio for the next album, actually, which is pretty cool. Holdsworth wasn't replaced, which is really telling, I think, in that, you know, Eddie Jobson wanted to be Keith Emerson. So in a way,
you've got One of a Kind on the one hand and Danger Money, the next UK album, the last UK album, kind of the two halves of what may have come next in the way McDonald's and Giles and in the wake halves of what came next. Of course, what happened after that was that John Wetton disagreed with Eddie Jobson in that direction, and John Wetton was saying, no, we need 3.5-minute pop songs now. And Eddie Jobson wants to do his thing, and he can't. They're doing that, which is what kind of why LP couldn't do it. So that was the end of the band anyway, actually. Totally. So it's just a little blip in history, and that's why it's almost a lost album that was really successful at the time. Strange. It's 5 eggs for me. It's a big one for me.
4 eggs.
That's good. We don't know what we're doing next week, so we can't tell you. Goodbye.